All right, several people asked me regarding audio, what I've switched over to. Um, First off, I just want to throw this out there as I put it in another video earlier on regarding the Sun SDR series of radios by Expert Electronics. In EESDR2, the processing tab is phenomenal. There's lots of options and it works very, very well. So that is not the reason that I went back to some outboard gear. I wanted to try some outboard gear again. I did in the past many years ago. I had a few issues with it. I went back over to a single piece of outboard gear. It is made by Behringer. It's the X-AIR series. The particular model that I'm running is the XR12. It is a mixer, an EQ, a gate, a compressor, and it has several other effects processors in it as well. It's, like I said, a single piece of gear. So you don't have patch cables going to other pieces of outboard gear equipment, things that can cause other issues with RF. You lose a lot of that with just a single piece. So that being said, what I have done, let me bring it up. This is what the X-Air looks like. It's like I said, a single piece of equipment. I have the mic input on channel 3. I'm using a PR781. The auxiliary 1, which is underneath the main left connector, is going into the Whirlwind IMP2 direct box. From that box, the output, the low Z output side, lifted up there or pictured up there in the top, sitting up above the X-Air. That goes into my mic, my mic 2 setting on the Sun SDR DX that I'm running. The purpose of the Whirlwind box is to break up. It's an audio isolation. So that's all that's being used for, to keep any RF from getting on to that mic cable going into the Sun SDR. So that's kind of the rundown with the setup. Now the main, the connector, the XLR connector you see that's in the main left jack, I'm using that. That actually goes to a XLR to USB adapter, and I'm using that to get audio into OBS Studio through the same mixer. So I'm using the audio mixer, the XR12, is an input device for the Sun SDR and an input device for OBS Studio using the same profile. Now the XR12, as you can see on the top left hand side of it, it does act as either an access point or you can control it. It is all GUI interfaced, networked. You control the software application through either the access point or through the Ethernet connection. There also is a Wi-Fi client as well. It's you can't see it with the cable in the way, but there's a middle tab there as well that's a Wi-Fi client. So basically when you first set it up, you would set it up using the access point and then go into the GUI interface and set up your Wi-Fi or your Ethernet connection. So I'll kind of show you that as we go through here. So without further ado, let's get this thing rolling. Again, my call is N8SDR, and kind of the quick rundown here, using software-defined radios made by Expert Electronics. Great radios, and really, really love them. by far the best SDR radio that I've used. So this is going to be the topic, the XR XR12 mixer. Okay, this is the GUI interface for the XR12. And up in the setup tab, let me bring this over to the other window so that it actually shows up for you guys. I'm using the LAN interface, where I've got this hard-coded onto my network, and it shows that it's being connected. There's the IP address, and I'm synchronizing from the mixer back to the PC. Not that that really matters for anything that we're doing here. You do have access point and wireless LAN interfaces as well. So it's kind of a neat little GUI interface setup that they have. It doesn't actually load any software, so it doesn't require any system resources. It's just an interface, a GUI interface to connect to the actual box to control everything. So as I said, I've got my PR781. You can label these your individual inputs and outputs. I've got my 781 on channel 3 on the input. I am running, there's the mic gain and my noise gate settings. The equalizer low cut, I'm cutting this at 54 hertz. That's my low cut frequency. You have a compressor setting as well. You do have output buses, and I've got everything going on output bus 1, and this is where you're linking your effect sends back in, and the amount of gain that you've got on those effect sends. Okay, so I'm going to kind of go through this fairly quick, not really intuitive. I'm still learning a lot with this thing, but just kind of a basic idea of how I've got this set up and working for me, and it seems to work pretty well. So on the input channel, which is channel 3, I'm not using any phantom power beams. This is a 781. Doesn't require it, but if you use a condenser mic, you can turn the power output on, obviously, and you will have your phantom power, your 48 volts for that condenser mic. You can also adjust your polarity and linking stereo if you want to link left and right. Again, my input gain on this mic is set currently underneath this profile at 29.5 dB. My low cut is set at 54. Here's the gate settings. There's a lot of pre-set gate settings in here that you can choose from. I choose to use kind of made of some adjustments off the vocal one. Then of course you would adjust it for your own noise that you have, background noise that you would have. You do have your attacks, your holds, your release, your ranges, your gain reduction shows up. If you want a sidechain filtering, anything like that, you can do so in here as well. The EQ, let me turn this off first. Okay. This is a parametric EQ that I'm running here. Again, my low cut is at 54 hertz on this particular profile that I'm using. And by the way, this is a profile that I use for my ESSB. This is my 7 to 8K profile that we're currently listening to, that we're currently using. So again, parametric, nice graphical layout. You can just simply click on the tabs and make your adjustments. You just type in your, let me make sure I change this back, but let's just say that we wanted to add more bass to this profile. We could, let's just say we wanted to add 4.5 dB to the low end, where the frequency range is 62.5 hertz, and we're using the quality of 2. If we tab down here, you can watch the graph up here. It's going to change. There, it just raised this little notch right there, so you get a nice graphical layout representation. Now let me change this back so I don't screw myself up. All right. Same with your low mids, your high mids, and your highs. You can adjust where you want to cut those frequencies or where you want to adjust those frequencies, and then the amount of bandwidth that you're actually using in that particular area. It does also have a real-time analyzer, which is what I've just turned on now. So you can watch and adjust from there. And now we're going to go over to the Compressor tab. Again, you have multiple presets. I've used, what works for me currently, so I've set these up as my threshold, my ratios, my gains, my mixes, the attacks, holds, releases. Again, you can filter sidechain if you need to. And then I'm running everything in the post EQ on the buses actually I'm only running one bus. And then my effects are all set up as post fader. There's a couple different series of these XRs. There's the XR12, which is the smallest one, which is the one I'm using, where you have 12 inputs and 2 auxiliary outputs and a left and right main output that are XLR. The auxiliary outputs are 1/4 inch TRS. There's 4 XLR connectors on the input side of the XR12, and then the rest, 5 through 12, are again 1/4 inch. There is a USB on it too that I should have mentioned, but the USB is only used on the XR12 and the XR16 for recording purposes. You can save recordings on a USB drive. That's what that's for. Now the XR18 and the big console XR32 do offer a ASIO ability, so you could actually use that as your input device via virtual audio cabling if you wanted to do so to your radio. I'm not running the XR18, so again, this is another reason why I did the on my main left output with the XLR to USB adapter to give me the ability to go into OBS Studio. It shows up as a virtual mic cable, basically. Ignore the thumping in the background. My grandkids are skating on the floor downstairs and using the door here as a stop. Not thrilling. Okay. So here's your mains. Okay, and here is your effects processing. Currently, I'm using the Sound Maxer, the plate reverb. Let me stack these here. Let's do this. Whoops. Get off that. Plate reverb, Sound Maxer. I have to move these up. And get back over here. Come on, get out of the way. Sorry. X-AIR, where'd my... Okay. So these are the 3 effects that I'm currently using in this audio chain. Sound Maxer is similar to processing to give you a little more bottom end. Of course, the plate reverb speaks for itself. And then the dual exciter, this is a representation of, say, like the Aphex. I'm using this for my upper frequencies a little bit to give them a little little higher end crispness, I guess, crispness to the upper frequencies. So let me pull these down. These are all adjustable by the basically you just let's pull this guy back up. You just adjust your sliders or your knobs using your mouse up and down wherever you want on each one of them. Some of these you'll see the where they have one of three. These are three different pages. There are three different areas that you can adjust. So they've got those on there. There is a ton of built-in effects on this thing, which is really nice. So to get to those, you just go to type, and you've got hall reverbs, ambience, rich plate reverb, which is one I'm using, room reverbs, chamber reverbs, plate reverbs, vintage rooms, gated reverbs, reverse reverbs, stereo delays. I mean, the list goes on. Flangers, which would never really use for obviously amateur radio, but you have phasers, courses, mood filters, speakers, sub octavators. I mean, just there's a lot of stuff that you can do in here. More EQs. You have dual graphics, stereo graphics, dual true EQs, stereo true EQs, dual de-essers, stereo de-essers. You have a Pultec, basically EQ section in here as well. Precision limiters, stereo combiners. I'm going to play around with the stereo combiner probably in another video later on, or the dual combiner. It's actually a multi-band compressor, which is pretty cool. You've got other compressors that are built in here, and all these features are in here. Here's your more of your effects and exciters that are in here. All of these that are in here are come with the software as it is. They're built into it, so it's basically a DAW built in a box with its own processor. So there isn't any lag or I'll say delay on audio. That's all taking place in the actual XR series box itself, and then just dumping that right back into the radio. So I have not noticed any audio delay here at all. If there is, it's extremely low. You've got kind of go through a few more of these. You've got amp modelings, tube amp modelings, pitch shifters, just a whole bunch of stuff, and you can just pick these and set them up in here. Again, this is like having, currently it's like me having 4 pieces of rack gear, a mixer or an audio preamp for the mic, an EQ, a bottom end, a gated, and a top end. So, kind of nice to have that all in one package. As far as you can go through here and adjust your metering however you want that stuff. Again, this is going to be kind of just a quick run through. To save your profiles, you would just create something and then click save. You can give it a name. The neat thing about this is you can exchange these with other users, that you may frequent with that are also running the XR series. And it doesn't really matter if it's the 12 or the 16 or the 18. You'd have to adjust, of course, like if somebody used an 18 and they were using, let's just say, channel 17 instead of channel 3, you would need to change your input channel to match whatever you have. But they all work the same. The software is the same on all of them. So you have that option, and then you can also do snapshot options, which is my preferred way of doing these. You can create a list of profiles. There's a couple of them in here from early on when I was playing around, and then my frequent ones that I use now are pretty much 21 through 23. Again, the 3630 group, you know, typical ESSB down there, 7 to 8K, and then my 4K profiles for normal, normal groups, and then I have one for DX. Now these, again, these are out to 4K, or where I've got them kind of set at, and then in the Sun SDR, which I'll show you in a minute, you can adjust, the actual bandwidth that you're transmitting there. So just because it says 4K, I'm not limited there. I can actually go higher than that, but that's where I've got this profile set on the XR, and I can go narrower than that as well, obviously. So typically my 4K profiles, I'll run anywhere from 3200 to 4K. If it's a larger group and the band's kind of tight, I'll narrow these down to 32, 3400. If it still seems to be a little spread out and it's not too congested, 35 to 38 or 4K, typically where I run those on the 4K profiles. So let me close this, and I'm just going to minimize the XR. Once this is, you can actually close this and the box will still run. When you turn it on, it goes back to the last profile or whatever you have saved in here. It just automatically starts that, so no need to actually leave this run. I do it, I just leave it minimized. So let's bring up the Sun SDR. Power this guy. Oh, I think I already had this running. Yep, I did. I already had it running in the background. My bad. All right, so okay, so we're back on the Sun. Got my audio in the background, and obviously that's probably a bad frequency. Stay away from that one.
Anyhow, that's kind of the deal. I was in the Air Force for 20 years.
Actually, I'm going to kind of slide off here a little bit. So when I go to transmit, basically all I'm doing is I'm in the Sun software now. Instead of running, my normal, what I would have in processing here, these guys, I've got these all, with the exception of the rotator, because that's not in, it's kind of keeping, and this really doesn't take any effect really for the most part until you get to AM, where it'll kind of keep your voice peaks in a positive side of things more than anything. So my preprocessor is disabled, my filters are all disabled, my noise gate's disabled, compressor, limiter. I am using the limiter. That's just keeping things under control with the output side of things, keeping the IMD down. Equalizer is disabled, my AGC is disabled, clipper I've never used, and then obviously I've just kind of saved this as a profile. So as far as the processing in the Sun, I'm just on mic 2, which is my RJ45 connector, which goes back again to the Whirlwind audio transformer, and then that in effect goes to the XR, which the 781 microphone is tied into. To adjust my transmit profiles, I just go into options, in my bandwidth I should say. Again, like I said, I'm normally down on 3630, so I've got 58 to 8K is my cutoff there that I normally use. So when I would switch to, let's just say in the XR, if I go over to my 4K profile, my 4K, I just pull this up, go to option 22, hit go. It's going to ask me if I want to load the snapshot, and okay, so that's loaded now. So there should be a little bit difference on audio as well here, with you guys listening to this. Actually, we can kind of verify this too, because here's the EQ for the 4K, and let me go back to where I was before. This is my 8K profile, so if we go back here and load this, you'll see that the EQ platform does change. So let me go back to the 4K for a second here. I'll load my 4K. So if I'm on 4K, what I'll do is load it up in here, and then just come back over to the Sun. And I guess I could create just another profile and save it. Probably be just as easy to do this. But I would just adjust this, you know, to say 3800. So I'm at 58 to 3800 now on my transmit, which doesn't affect anything for your digital settings, obviously. Or AM. Same with AM. If I go to make a profile for AM, I can adjust that in here, and I'll just save it as an AM profile in XR, and when I go to it, it'll just dump it in here, and I'll be set. So that's kind of the quick rundown. Let me go back to 8K here so I don't mess myself up, and apply. So that's kind of the quick rundown of how I'm doing that. Again, nothing's on the processor. Just it's kind of a blank profile to save in there. And that should hopefully that answers a few questions of how I'm doing that stuff and what's going on with it. Again, it's a really neat box. You get a lot of options, a lot of effects, a lot of effect options. Like I said, you can go through here and choose whatever you want to. You do have 4 effects inputs on the XR12, and I think the 16 also has 4 as well. Now the 18 I think may have a couple more. I'm not positive about that. I think it does, but really, I mean, typically most guys are going to probably run 2 or 3, maybe 4. So the XR12 does fine with that. Now, there are guys using these that are also taking the audio out of the radio and running it into one of the channels, and then running, off your main left and main right monitor speakers. I've got my monitor speakers just plugged into the PC because I'm dumping. Let me close this down. I'm dumping all my audio back into the PC. Then out of the PC into, actually here, out of the PC into my monitor speakers. So that's how I'm getting my receive audio back currently. But I probably will play around with that a little bit later on, and maybe do a little things with the XR, because one of the guys I know down on 3630, Greg, WB9DNZ, did find that he could filter out a few things noise-wise through the XR that was in there, which is kind of neat. So you can just set a notch filter basically in the XR and notch out items that are bothering you, that are there all the time. So kind of a neat way to do that as well. Hopefully that answers a few questions, and we'll do some more videos. Sorry, it's been a while since I've done some. So again, hope that clears up a few things regarding the external audio, as I call it, the rack in the box. The X-Air series, made by Behringer. You can get these things online. Sweetwater, a lot of music stores have them. You can get them off of Amazon, of course. Parts Express. They're available several different places. So the 12 runs around $385, I think, is pretty much an average price for that. It's sounds a little expensive, but if you're running outboard gear, by the time you do what most of the guys are doing with, say, the Behringer DEQ 2496, you're already at that price. I think those things are up to around $400 themselves now, or $350, $400. So, you add that, you're adding up you know, another piece of rack gear in there, say the virtualizer, which most guys use for a little bit of reverb. You know, that's a couple $100 there as well. So you've already kind of got that beat by using the all-in-one. And what I found is less cabling, less chances for RF getting on something. So, and there's quite a few guys that are running these now. So I'll thank Greg, WB9D&Z, who he is the one that in a conversation with him and a couple other guys down on 3630, found out that's what he was running. And there's quite a few guys down there running them now as well, and more guys I know are picking them up. So kind of a neat little box. It works well. Take care. Have a great day. N8SDR. See yous.